Very good. Well, thank you very much, Malcolm, for the welcome, and thanks everyone for having me on. It's an amazing privilege and encouragement to be gathered online like this with people from around the country and from Australia, at least in one case, to sit here together under God and talk about what He's doing in and amongst us and celebrate those things. The idea of multiplying gospel workers, multiplying disciples, multiplying churches is one that the New Testament talks about a lot, and so hence the name multiply. Um, in terms of my background, I grew up in Timaru on the South Island of New Zealand. I was part of a family who were probably socially Christian, but not actually Christian. So we would go to church at Easter and at Christmas, and that was about it. And so while I attended church a fair bit over the years, the gospel actually didn't ever impact me in a serious way. And I actually had to leave the country to hear the gospel properly for the first time, which is partly formative in the ministry that I've landed in. My wife and my wife Anna and I did some overseas travel. We lived in the UK, in Glasgow, then London, and then spent about 15 years in Sydney. And so, apologies if you can still hear a bit of that accent in my voice. I'm a picker-upper of accents wherever I go. But yes, it was through the church in Sydney that we actually heard the gospel for the first time in a way that impacted us in connection with the baptism of our second daughter. We were 39 years old, my wife and I, at the time, and so we wondered, well, what on earth did God do? What was He doing, leaving us out in the wilderness, as it were, for nearly 40 years? That led to a real, rethink of our lives. And I quickly became involved in church governance and administration. And so when we returned to New Zealand in 2016, I got involved in a local church here in Auckland, and quickly got involved in governance there. And that led about 2.5 years ago to me taking on this role as the general manager of Multiply. Now, Multiply was formed by a couple of church pastors, a couple of church planters actually, back in 2015, because they saw a need for more healthy Bible teaching churches across the country. Interestingly, what they found was that while there were definitely lots of places to plant churches and even money to support that happening, the real issue was that there weren't people to plant. There weren't trained gospel workers who were ready and able to lead a church plant. And that's really a reflection of the fact that, as you may well know, New Zealand is one of the most secular nations on earth. In the last half of the last century, New Zealand saw a drop off in Christianity that was probably as steep as, if not steeper, than any other country in the Western world. So a radical change. And we saw in the 2023 census that about 52% of respondents said that they were of no faith. So 52% of the country said that there is no God, which is a pretty shocking statistic for a previously strongly Christian nation. And I find that really interesting because if you'd asked me before I got involved in Multiply what I think about mission, I think I would have said, well, mission is my local community, so the area around my local church, and it's sending people overseas. What I wouldn't have talked about is mission to New Zealand. And part of that, the reason for that, I think, is that I didn't really understand how much New Zealand needs the gospel, just how desperate that need is. Jesus said that the harvest is plentiful, but the workers are few. And that statement is completely true of New Zealand today. Funnily enough, as well, if you do a Google search of cities of more than 500,000 people furthest from Jerusalem, Number one on the list is Auckland. So we are literally the ends of the earth. So as the gospel goes out, we are the ends of the earth. And so against that need, that gospel need, the question for us at Multiply is, well, how might we do something under God that might bring about some gospel renewal? What is it that God's gifted us in? What are the resources that He's given us? What might we do? And so we've focused on three main areas. The first is training new gospel workers, which I'll talk about a bit more in a second. The second is something that we refer to as church health. And the third is church planting. And so really we're seeing there, we hope, a logical progression from training new gospel workers to lead healthy churches to then go on to plant new healthy churches. And so we've set this vision for ourselves under God, which is to see a gospel-focused, healthy church local to every New Zealander. That vision is a long, long way off. There are a lot of places in New Zealand where it would be difficult to find a local church that will faithfully teach the Bible, and that's a very sad reality. And so coming back to this idea that while there are places to plant and there's even funding to support planting, but there aren't people to plant, one of our key focuses is training new gospel workers or seeing new gospel workers trained by the local church. The reality is that in New Zealand, we're primarily an importer of new church leaders. And so if we need somebody to lead a new church, in many cases, we're bringing somebody in from overseas. Why is that? The answer is that there are very few locals who are coming up through the ranks to lead those churches. Why is that? It's because the local church isn't training them. There are some great exceptions to that. There are some churches that are doing a great job in terms of training new gospel workers, but there's not that many. So Romans 10, 14 and 15, one of my favorite passages. How then can they call on the one they've not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they've not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can anyone preach unless they are sent? As it is written, how beautiful are the feet of those who bring good news. Now, one never wants to add to Scripture, but I don't think Jesus would mind if I suggested that we could add, how can they be sent if they aren't raised up and trained? And so our heart is to see the local church seeing as a key part of its role to recognize those who might be gifted for a lifetime of ministry, and guiding them through, shepherding them through those first steps of thinking about, well, could this be the right thing for me? And so we'd like to see the local church being the training ground for the next generations of gospel workers. To that end, we're currently working on something, the working title of which is the Gospel Workers Study Fund, which is a fund which will raise money for the training of new gospel workers. The cost of that is one of the big barriers for churches doing that. And it will offer scholarships to ministry students. So that's a core area for us, that area of training new gospel workers and seeing the local church do that. I mentioned church health as a second area that we look into. Health is a funny word, isn't it? It's got a positive ring to it, but you sort of think, well, what do you actually mean by that? And so what we mean by that is partly it's having a healthy leader, but a healthy church, we would say, is one which is glorifying God. It's in gospel, living in gospel community together, on mission to the lost. Growing in maturity, growing in Christian maturity, and serving and giving. So it's those sorts of Christian attributes that we'd love to see, and so that's the sort of attributes that we are hoping to see in the local church, and looking to get alongside local churches to say, well, what does your church look like against those sorts of scales? And if some of them are lacking, what might you do about actually changing that? So, sort of a church consultation sort of exercise, and can be quite interesting. All leading to seeing more churches planted. So that again, the view is that if we have more gospel workers coming through who become healthy church leaders, then they in turn will hopefully be well placed under God to plant new healthy churches. Um, and a big part of the church planting side of things is an assessment. And so what we do is an assessment of the planting couple, um, to help them see in the context of the specific type of plant that they're planning to do, just what are their strengths and weaknesses. So what's going to come fairly naturally to them, fairly easily, but at the same time, what are they going to struggle with? What are they going to find difficult? And consequently, what are the sorts of people that they're going to want to surround themselves with to supplement those strengths and weaknesses? And I think the benefits of that are that they really go in with their eyes open as to what will be easy and what will be hard, and so it gives them better prospects of success, we think, and God willing. And new churches reach more new people. So statistically, a new church plant has a much greater impact in terms of reaching the lost than an existing church. What else to say? That's probably, oh, the other thing I'll mention is that we run an annual conference in August each year. We restarted that in August of this year after COVID, a break over the COVID period. We had about 125 people gathered at a venue in Mount Wellington in Auckland. And it was a mission conference, so looking to encourage people in mission and specifically into this idea of training new gospel workers and seeing new churches planted. And so that's a conference that will be ongoing in the coming years. Malcolm, should I talk about the prayer points? I'm just conscious of time. Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing those. So there's 6 prayer points we put up there. Just very quickly, yeah, just to give thanks for those who are already part of the Multiply Network. We do want to see more churches joining that network and to see a network where churches are supporting each other. Yeah, do pray for more workers for the harvest. As I said, we are desperately short in New Zealand of new gospel workers, new church leaders. And so just pray for that. For every new gospel worker, we also need someone to train them. And so do pray as well for more church leaders to have a heart for training. Fourthly, we've said there, pray for unity and partnership. Yeah, again, as I said before, we're better together. And so for this network to work in a way which is truly supportive of each other in this gospel work. I've said there at number 5, pray for our intensives and training gatherings. So we have get-togethers a number of times a year with trainees and trainers, which are really great sort of cohort type experiences where people encourage and support each other in the Word. So do pray for those. And yeah, mostly number 6, pray for gospel impact across the country. We do just pray that yeah, God would move through His Spirit in a really big way across this country and see the many, many lost impacted by the gospel and accepting Christ as their Lord and Saviour. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the opportunity to share that with you.